In Iraq, two US-backed militia leaders have said that Al-Qaida is trying to bribe them to return to the terrorist group. It is feared the departure of American troops at the end of August is being exploited to attract new Al-Qaida members. Some officials in Iraq say the organization is making a big comeback, partly due to the power vacuum and political instability of the war-torn country. Others play down the problem, saying Iraq's military has everything under control. We're now joined by the journalist who broke the story, Martin Chuloff, the Guardian's Iraq correspondent, live from Baghdad. Well, hello to you. So the so-called Sons of Iraq grew out of a series of mini rebellions against militants associated with Al-Qaida that started in 2006. They soon grew into a success story in Iraq, capitalized upon by the then commanding US General David Petraeus. He agreed to pay each member a $300 monthly salary. Now we're hearing reports that they weren't always getting paid, that Al-Qaida is allegedly offering more money to these people. How serious is this problem? Is there evidence?
It's looming as a very serious problem in Iraq. As you say, the Sons of Iraq were a group who were credited with helping stop the violent insurgency throughout 2006-2007. They've been hailed ever since by the Americans as people who are a cornerstone of the future of security for this country. However, as the Americans prepared to leave, they have handed over responsibility for paying and managing the Sons of Iraq program to the Iraqi government. The Iraqi government's commitment to the predominantly Sunni Sons of Iraq groups has not been as strong, and over recent months we've seen a very sharp spate of attacks against Sons of Iraq leaders and militiamen, and we're seeing some very disturbing reports recently about Al-Qaida offering more money to defect to them than they would have been receiving by the government, and indeed some of those approaches being successful, so we are told. Yesterday we spoke to one Sons of Iraq leader who said that 100 of his members have not turned up for the last 2 months to pick up salaries. He says that can only mean one thing, that they are now being paid by the enemy.
Certainly not going to be good news for Washington, D.C. and Capitol Hill there. Tariq Aziz, Saddam Hussein's former deputy, has accused President Obama of, quote, leaving Iraq to the wolves, saying U.S. troops should stay. Now, given the troop pullout at the end of this month, surely it's not the right time for the Americans to leave.
Well, they were remarkable words for Saddam Hussein's chief lieutenant to be calling for the Americans to be staying. He said that there was a massive mistake made to come here, to invade in the first place, but to leave Iraq like this would indeed, in his words, be feeding the country to the wolves. He's saying that nothing is stable here, there is a security vacuum, there is no stability in the near future at all, there is a vicious political stalemate, and that the few tenets that this society is built on, the army, perhaps the police force, and a couple of other things like that which could potentially keep the country secure in the future, are certainly not ready to do so now. So his words were a direct challenge to the White House, which is saying that this job is done, that the institutions are ready to take over, including the army, and that Iraq, the foundations of a new Iraq, have been laid. If you look around the country, there are many people who would dispute that. We are seeing a slow but steady uptick in violence on a daily, weekly and monthly basis, and we have seen so for the last 5 months. So the mood on the streets is not good. There's a sense of dread as the Americans prepare to disappear, and I think that they will have to mount a pretty strong case as to why their position that the job is done should be believed.
Now, Mr. Chuloff, you talk about a political stalemate that's ongoing at the moment, corruption, increased violence. Talk about the end game here. It's painting a really gloomy picture. What do you think will be in store for the average Iraqi civilian in the future?
Well, people are very much worried about that. So, I mean, the one thing that they are banking on is that the oil money, which will start to come online later this year, will start to lead to increased service delivery. People across Iraq are not getting any more than 3 to 4 hours electricity per day during what has been a staggeringly hot summer. Today, the official maximum in Baghdad is 50 degrees, and I think it's probably a bit higher than that. So people look downstream. They see streets that are still unsafe 7 years after the US arrived here. They see widespread endemic corruption at all levels of government and all levels of bureaucracy. It's almost not possible to deal with any level of the Iraqi bureaucracy and not be shaken down for some sort of bribe. They look around, they see the irrigated lands being deprived of water. They see almost every single thing that they would be entitled to expect to be delivered to them by a government is not being delivered. There's not a great deal of room for optimism unless this oil money does come online and unless the government and its people change their ways here and do start to funnel that money to the people who need it.
Now, Mr. Chuloff, very quickly here, I'm running out of time, but was the war, in your opinion, a success for the US and for Iraq?
Look, it's been a very difficult 7 years for the Americans, no doubt about that. Strategically, they look as though they've lost some significant ground in the Middle East, especially to Iran, the neighbouring state, who seems to have consolidated their influence here. The American project was above and beyond, at the end of the day, to try and democratise things here. Although the elections were fair and transparent, democracy is not something that you can say has become rooted in this state. The Americans will leave having tried over the last 3 years to turn around some of the strategic mistakes they made, but I think by any objective measure, they have lost ground here. They have lost influence in the Middle East.
All right. The Guardian's Iraq correspondent, Martin Chuloff. Thank you.